Roe deer are primarily found in Europe, where the species has flourished in recent decades. This film depicts the roe deer's year, with the emphasis on the roebuck's annual cycle. There have been roe deer in Denmark for almost as long as there has been forest. 8,000-year-old finds, that is from the older Stone Age, are proof of this. But roe deer were probably not among the most commonly hunted animals, which is shown by the lack of bones from the animal in contemporary kitchen garbage. Later, roe deer became much more popular with hunters. In the years up to our time, they were on the brink of extinction. By the end of the 18th century, the species had disappeared from the island of Bornholm, but was reintroduced 100 years later. Roe deer are without doubt our most graceful deer species. Their appealing eyes and graceful bodies could lead the inexperienced to believe that this is a very gentle and tolerant animal. But experience derived from roe deer fostered and kept in captivity, as well as observations of the buck's rutting battles, show that this little deer possesses almost supernatural strength and ferocity. In the early months of fall, the roebucks cast their antlers. New growth begins immediately after the old ones have disappeared. Old bucks may cast in the early fall, the younger animals rather later. Fawns retain their antlers, which are little more than 2 bony buttons, until the beginning of the next year. At this time of year, the animal's coat is several centimeters thick. The hollow hairs which trap air provide excellent insulation against the cold. On the other hand, roe deer skins are not suitable for use as chair covers in the home, for example, as even with moderate use, the hairs will break off. The antlers of the older bucks are already fully developed at the beginning of winter. The velvet that covers the newly formed antlers and supplies them with blood through a maze of veins will make even an average buck look like a record head. Here it is first and foremost the height of the antlers that indicates the quality of the head. With the approach of spring, the roe deer's coat starts to itch, and the animals can often be seen scratching and shaking themselves. This is a sign that the molt has begun. During this period, the animals appear as though they have been attacked by swarms of moths. The young animals are first to shed their winter coats for the much thinner and redder summer coat. Shedding begins around the neck and head. Only male roe deer have antlers, which normally makes differentiating between the sexes easy. But during the period where the bucks have shed their antlers, does can be distinguished by downward-pointing brush of hair in the center of the target. During the same period, the bucks grow a distinctive tuft of hair on the penile sheath. During the early spring, the old bucks begin to fray. The flow of blood to the skin around the antlers has almost stopped. However, during fraying, the head and antlers of a buck will often become stained from the remaining blood vessels torn by the rubbing. The initial rubbing, where the skin is removed from the antlers, is usually completed after a few hours, but may take several days. During this period, the buck will mark their territories by frequent fraying. After the velvet has been rubbed from the antlers, they're almost completely white. The coloration is a result of fraying on young trees and plants. The attractive dark color is a combination of blood and fresh plant sap. Even after this period, the buck will continue to fray. The purpose of fraying is to mark off territory so that a rival buck is made aware that the area is already occupied. There are glands in the buck's forehead which transfer scent to trees and plants through rubbing, and this informs other bucks that the area cannot be entered without risk. Spring is here. Trees and bushes burst into leaf, and young trees may also bear the brunt of the buck's territorial marking. The horse chestnut and the forest floor, with its carpet of bluebells, shows that summer is just around the corner. The red cheeks and behavior of the pheasant cock signals that other cocks should not attempt to interfere with his harem. In Europe, the early does fawn at the end of April to the middle of May. The dark brown coloring of the fawns, interspersed with white spots, is one of nature's examples of how a defenseless animal is protected from predators through excellent camouflage. When the fawn is lying motionless, it is almost impossible for the inexperienced eye to detect it. The young have almost no scent. Fawns first begin to follow their mothers when they are around 14 days old. While the young are still small, the mothers will defend them against predators, and many foxes have been forced to retreat from a pair of roe deer hooves that can be as dangerous as sharp knives. The relaxed attitude towards other bucks during the winter is now over. Only small yearlings, which present no threat at all, will be tolerated within a dominant buck's territory. Even small bucks growing their first antlers will be abruptly shown the door. The position of this buck's ears shows aggression, and the unfortunate intruder must leave the area. In most cases, such disputes will be decided without a fight. As a visible sign of the territorial claim, the dominant buck will rub continuously, scrape the ground with its front hooves, and deposit scent marks. Approximately 40,000 roebucks are shot in Denmark during the spring and summer hunting season, and this choice of hunting season is widespread throughout Europe. Our roebuck hunt starts in Scotland. It is April, and the weather is still unpredictable, with low-lying cloud and snow showers that can descend without warning, making the hunt an unusual experience. Stalking an old buck requires skill and luck. Roe deer have an excellent sense of smell and hearing. On the other hand, their sight is poor, and the animals have difficulty in distinguishing between a person in hunting clothes and the forest background. But any sudden movement will mean a fruitless stalk. When the buck has been selected, the hunter must find a position from which it is possible to find a clear shot. After finding the right position, the buck must be situated at right angles to it. A 180 grain Norma Vulcan bullet hits the animal as it should, a perfect shot to the heart. But it is impossible to tell from the point of penetration which organ the bullet has struck. Only experience will help here. The rifle used in stalking roe deer can in principle be of any caliber. All of the popular calibers such as 30.06, .308 or 6.5 x 55 are suitable. But by choosing a heavy bullet, all types of deer up to elk can be hunted and a minimum of the meat will be destroyed. Caliber .222 will, on the other hand, seem too small to many people, but in an experienced hunter's hand, it will be adequate. If the animal is not visible, it is wise to wait for at least 10 minutes before approaching the place where it was shot. Here it is possible to tell from the spoor and other signs what effect the bullet had. If it appears that the animal has only been wounded, the place should be marked and a trained tracker dog put into action. A bracing, exciting hunt is the introduction to a magnificent trophy.
En dejlig buk. En dejlig buk. Det er en... Ja, det er en buk typisk opgørs fors, som du har set mange af dem. De har normalt lang forsbrus også. Og når de så bliver det typisk
A younger buck enjoying the sunshine, and a fine six-pointer appears, both good examples of the difference there can be in antlers. No two heads are exactly alike. There will always be a difference in a pearl or points. A beautiful summer morning, where the roe deer and the fox present their young ones to the world. Foxes are the most serious danger to the newly born fawns. Many end up as food for foxes that precisely during this period must find a lot of food for their ever-hungry cubs. The fawn can be distinguished by its rather immature appearance. The The doe and the fawn spend most of their time eating to gather strength for the winter. The buck, on the other hand, spends more and more time marking off its territory so that potential rivals will know who is boss here. This is demonstrated immediately if a rival should appear. The amount and quality of the food within the buck's territory are the determining factors for the number of does living there. The better the food, the more does. The size of the territory is also determined by the quality of the area. The best territories in forests may be less than 10 hectares. Territories of poor quality, on the other hand, will often be more than 100 hectares in area. The buck is always on the alert, and the doe is investigated time after time. This continues until the does are no longer in heat during August and, in principle, have all been covered. If a doe has not been covered within the normal period at the beginning of August, there will be a further period of heat roughly 20 days later. Fights may be very violent. It is not uncommon for bucks to be injured, and some may even die. When boiling the trophy, the hunter will often find various types of injury to the skull and antlers as a consequence of these battles. Both bucks apparently survived this confrontation without serious injury. Roes live alone during the mating season, unlike the females of the larger deer species. Prior to mating, the buck and the doe find each other by the aid of scent and sound. The doe's soft whimper attracts the buck. In countries where hunting is permitted during the rut, this sound is imitated to decoy the buck. Before mating, the buck drives the doe around in circles and figures of 8. This may continue for some time, and all the while there may be competitors who must be kept at a distance. The doe is only in heat for a few days. On the other hand, mating is repeated many times. During the rut season, The fawns, which are now roughly 3 months old, are left to themselves much of the time. A roe deer fawn is an easy prey for predators. The most dangerous predator is the fox. Other predators such as wolves, lynx, and bears also play a part. The buck mate with the doe many times. After mating, the doe is pregnant for 10 months. This is due to the so-called embryonic diapause, where the fetus only develops to a length of less than an inch during the first 5 months of the pregnancy. Normally, the doe will give birth to 2 fawns in May or June, but triplets and even quadruplets are not unknown. The doe can become pregnant throughout its life, but the younger does are the better mothers. The main reason for this is considered to be the poorer milk production in older animals due to their worn-down teeth. Mating consumes a lot of energy. Unlike other deer species, the roebuck eats during the rutting season. The marks on the side of this doe are from mating, but parasites can also cause damage to the coat. A kestrel has found a good resting and observation post. Rutting has left its mark. Several bucks have visible injuries. However, the hunters only observe these after the animal has been shot. Examples of injuries range from damaged eyes to broken points, cracked burrs, and fractured skulls, but most are less serious and not permanent leg injuries. Besides a rifle and rifle rest, the stalker's equipment includes a good pair of binoculars. A rifle rest is a good tool, both when shooting and observing. During stalking itself, it is important to stop frequently in order to investigate hollows, hedges, and the outskirts of forests. The Germans have an expression for this method of proceeding. They say, "Pürchen gehen ist Pürchen stehen." If the hunter is sufficiently lucky and skilled, he may see the buck before it sees him. A young buck is not as cunning as an older animal, and less luck is necessary to surprise one. On the other hand, it requires all of a hunter's patience and skill to surprise an old buck. Stalking, or hunting roebuck from a stand, are 2 possibilities, and all types have their individual attractions. Stalking provides the hunter with a good knowledge of the terrain and the animals in it, allowing the selection of the right buck. Hunting from a high seat allows a safer shot, and the high seats disturb the terrain very little. A good 6-pointer emerges from the field. The trick now is to wait until it is standing in the right position for a safe shoulder shot. The buck was dropped by a well-placed shoulder shot, which enhances the good hunting experience. Although the two situations were almost identical, this animal dropped in its tracks, whereas the former ran about 50 meters. The hunter can learn from this that no matter how similar two shooting episodes may appear, the reactions may differ greatly. Stalking in open countryside puts special demands on the hunter's skill, and it is often necessary to crawl in order to get into position. The buck suddenly notices a movement. And although the animal is partly hidden by the vegetation, the hunter succeeds in placing a bullet in its shoulder. Roebucks weigh from 25 to 28 kilograms, and in Sweden, where some of this film was recorded, average weights will be higher, up to 30 kilograms. Generally, the animals grow bigger bodies and antlers the further east we go in Europe. An excellent result of a delightful morning's stalking in Sweden. The age of a roe deer can be determined by evaluating the wear on the teeth in its lower jaw. The first jaw is from an older animal. The second comes from a yearling. Sweden is known for its fine roe heads, where measured points are given for the weight of the antlers when correctly cut off, as well as for the length and volume of the points. Finally, up to 25 points are given for beauty. Weight and volume count most. As a rule of thumb, the antlers of a 100-point buck should weigh approximately 350 grams. Fall is approaching. A doe has found a warm resting place from where there is also a good view of the surroundings. The transition from forest to field is the preferred biotope of roe deer. Food, shelter, and cover are all close by. The roebuck's antlers work loose. Many hunters have noticed missing stumps when the fall buck moves out of the woods. The new antlers begin straight away to take form. The summer coat is changed for the warm winter fur. The buck can gather again in peace without showing aggression. Winter vegetation in the fields and natural hedgerows are important reasons for the increased welfare of roebuck in recent years. Roebuck suit the climate of the north and can survive periods of really harsh winters. One can, of course, provide additional, moderate feeding in the hardest of winters. Minerals are important for all animals. A thrown antler is quickly consumed by the smaller animals of the forest. With the erection of lick stones, one can ensure roebuck and other wildlife receive the necessary mineral supplement. Lick stones and other forms of feeding are best provided for in quiet areas, away from curious onlookers, and where the roebuck feel at home. Putting up a mineral stone is simple, and placed in the right spot will be much appreciated by the roebuck. Through hunting opportunities, the hunter can gain a special interest for roebuck and their preservation. Appropriate game management and judicious protection can ensure that roebuck flourish also in the future. In this way, the cycle is complete, and a new year in the world of the buck can begin.